Chapter 10. Zoey never rode a motorcycle before. Tracker had to stop every few miles to let her rest and get her something to eat. Fed up with not making much time, he grew weary, and whenever he was bored and weary, he needed something to take his mind off of leaving Sadia and leaving home. When he spotted a rest stop, he headed off the interstate and pulled close to the large trees in the back where 3 big wheels were lined up. He saw a path and took off through the trees and then stopped. "What is it?" Zoey asked. "I need you." "Now?" Tracker reached and grabbed her, taking her off the bike with one hand and dragging her into the brush between the tall trees. Looking at her, his eyes blazing. She stared at him, mouth open, confused and wordless. "Bend over," he said. His voice gruff without emotion. Zoey watched at him unzip his jeans. Realizing what his intentions were, she turned and did as she had been told. It was automatic. She never refused Beau, but he was her husband, and she knew what the consequences were if she refused. Her hands on the tall pine tree bracing herself, Zoey made a gesture to turn to question Tracker. It was at that moment Tracker reached and... As Tracker zipped his jeans, Zoey looked up at him. "Is that all you want from me? To stop every mile and fuck me? What is wrong with you? At least I got some rest with Beau." Infuriated with Zoey's words, Tracker said, "I'm a werewolf." "A what?" She blinked her eyes more than once and began looking at him, and slanted her head to the side and laughed. When she thought about what he had said, she laughed again, but this time it was a loud, strange laugh. "Did you say a werewolf?" To humor him, she said, "I can see that. You have all that hair on your body. You do look like a wolf." Her tone playful as she looked around for her torn panties. After finding them, she knew she would not be putting them back on, so she walked to his bike and reached in a compartment and pulled out a fresh pair. He watched at her step into them and felt the desire come over him again, but by this time Zoey was looking at him and laughing. "So you are a big bad wolf." "I didn't say a wolf, and it's not funny. I'm a werewolf. Half human and half wolf. Do you see that moon?" She looked up when he gestured, and the clouds were revealing it. She caught sight of it through the tall pines. "Yes." "Now what?" she said, half laughing and half frowning from the pain she had gotten from the lack of passionate sex she just endured. "It's who I am. It's how I choose to ease the pain of the moon controlling my life." Tracker's tone serious and his voice edged with steel. He glared at her with the sliver of light from the moon reflecting off his bright cold blue eyes. She didn't know whether to run, laugh, or stay. So she just stood there thinking he was just trying to frighten her away. He had gotten tired of her, and now he wanted her to leave without him having to tell her to go, but she would stay. What did she have to go back to? With all his talk of being a werewolf and all his stopping to fuck her hard in the woods, nothing was worse than what she had endured with Beau. And yet she loved Beau, or thought she did. Maybe she didn't know any better. Maybe she didn't know what love was. Somehow she knew Tracker liked her, but he didn't love her, and Zoey was looking for love. But once again it had been with all the wrong men. "When it's a full moon, this will go on until I'm satisfied sexually. You can stay or you can leave and go back to Beau. But if you stay with me and give me what I need, I will protect you from him and make sure you have all the material things you desire. You will never have to want for anything again." Wasn't that what Beau had promised her? He would buy her a home and pretty dresses, and take her on vacation to the islands, or maybe just go to Las Vegas and see a show. What did Zoey have to lose? Maybe he was just bragging, and maybe he was a little strange or touched in the head, she thought. She knew crazy. Beau was crazy and Tracker wasn't as crazy as Beau, or maybe he was. She never had a good feel for men. Maybe she hadn't met enough of them to compare. Tracker didn't appear to be violent to her, and that was all she had hoped for from a man. To treat her good. To treat her soft. To treat her gentle. This had been the first time Tracker had been rough with her. So she decided to give him another chance. She had no more chances to get this right because now she was afraid to go back to Bo. She didn't need money, but it would be nice to afford a new dress and shoes. Looking at Tracker, he had potential. He had a strong body. He could get a job doing something physical, and she could find a job in a restaurant until they saved enough to do the things and see the places she dreamed of. "I'll stay with one condition," Zoey said. Tracker glanced at Zoey with a raised eyebrow. "I don't want to have sex in the woods again." Tracker looked at her and shot her a wide smile. "I can live with that." He held out his hand to her, and she climbed up and sat on the bike. He looked forward, not at her. He knew that at any moment he would be forced to go back on his word. But he would try to control himself. It was late when they passed 6 bikers traveling east as they were going west. Zoey looked across the highway at them. She thought she recognized one. She held on tight to Tracker. He felt her small hands grasp his jacket. Pulling onto Highway 49 to 50 south to Pollock Pines was the place Tracker was heading. He remembered his father had a cabin there. It sat back in a national forest. It was Lysel's home away from home when he traveled to San Francisco in search of women to marry into their once small pack. He stopped the motorcycle. "What are we doing here? I can't see anyone the way I look." She took off her wool cap and tried to brush down her hair, but it was so short individual pieces of hair stuck up like fresh-cut grass. Tracker didn't answer. He parked the bike at the back door and stepped down. "This is a beautiful place." It was a large cabin built of logs in the middle of nowhere. The grass had been cut and tended to and made a circle around the cabin. The back, however, pushed against the woods and the deck faced the dense tall grass and trees. A path led to an open area where there stood tall trees of all species. "You must know people with money," Zoey said, following Tracker. He smiled. "I guess I do. It belongs to my father." "A werewolf, I would guess." "You got it. Let's go in." He held out his hand to her. "We're going to stay 2 days until you have rested and I get what I need, and then we're going south and on to Mexico. Have you ever been there?" "I haven't been anywhere. I thought Bo would take me one day." Tracker looked at Zoey. He could see she knew only of Bo, and she was still connected to him like he was to Sadia. It was an abnormal connection. He began to regret leaving Sadia the way he did. He never felt remorse about most things, but for some reason he was feeling guilty. But it couldn't be undone. It was over, and it would be a long time before he set eyes on her again. Zoey trailed behind Tracker up the path and on the deck. He reached inside a flower pot. The flower had long since died and left leaves and dry soil. Reaching his hand inside the soil, he retrieved the key. When Tracker opened the door, he felt around for the light switch and turned it on. To his surprise, the lights came on. He got another surprise when he looked at the kitchen. It was full with fruit and food. He didn't want to see his father come through the door. He was hoping like hell that wouldn't happen. He had finally cut ties, and he didn't want this now. The great room had a stone fireplace, and the interior of the place matched the outside with logs. It was a place for a man. Everything in the cabin said man. There were no curtains but shutters. There were large brown leather chairs and sofas. 2 facing a large table. Over the fireplace, a head of a deer. Zoey turned her head because she didn't like seeing animals displayed. That meant they were dead, and she didn't like death of any kind. She wouldn't spend her time in the great room, she thought. She rushed out to look at the rest of the cabin. As Zoey roamed the cabin, and finding it had 2 bedrooms and 2 baths, she rushed to the kitchen to tell Tracker that she wanted to stay longer. Instead, she found food to eat, so she dove into the fruit on the table. She saw Tracker standing on the outside. He had just placed a call to Thorn. "Where are you?" Thorn asked. Guess. Father's cabin. How did you know? It was a guess. When you said you would go to Mexico, I knew you would need to make a few pit stops to hunt for fresh meat, and you had that human with you. Your girl, remember? So I called Hunter. He must have had someone bring food up and clean the place. Is there nowhere I can get lost? And the female is not my girl. She's just here to take care of my needs. I don't think you want to get lost or you wouldn't call home, Thorn said, laughing. How is your female and what's her name? I said she's not mine. She has a husband. I just have her here to fuck and keep me company. I'll dump her soon, Tracker said. That sounds great. Have you considered taking me with you? I could be there in a few hours. Thorn waited anxiously to hear from Tracker. Tracker thought about it for a few minutes. He didn't want to enrage his father more by influencing Thorn. No. Only if there's trouble I can't handle. And that's not likely to happen. Is everything going okay at the ranch? Tracker said. Wilder is still missing in action. Mother is upset and angry with everyone except Uncle Drayton. Uncle Wilder is probably at the cave, Tracker said. I remember Father complaining that he goes there when he's pissed with him, and when Mother is spending too much time with Father. I guess he goes off to hunt and kill something to keep from taking it out on the ones he loves. He'll be back by the new moon. I guess so. Tracker could hear a hard breath over the phone. What is it? Tracker asked. He had to pull everything out of Thorn. Thorn didn't like to talk too much, and in that way he was like Hunter. There's talk that Robert is taking his girls and moving out of Samseville. Everyone is angry at everyone. Because of me? That and Sadia. What about Sadia? There was a pause. She ran away from home and we tried to find her, but she covered her tracks and smell. Only you can find her. I'm not going to look for her. She's doing that on purpose or to have me go back to Samseville. I'm not falling for any more of her tricks. What do you mean? It's nothing, Tracker said. Since you left, everyone is pissed at everyone. If you had been here, you could have found her and brought her home, they all said. She's a clever female. She's just trying to get sympathy because of her deception. What deception? That's not important. If I were you, I wouldn't waste too much time looking for her. Remember that nursery rhyme Mother used to read to us? Leave them alone and they'll come home. Oh yeah, the one about the sheep. I get it. I'm about to get into something now, and I don't have much time. There was a snicker coming from Thorn. He knew what Tracker was getting into or what he meant. Tracker hung up the phone. He wanted to give Thorn the impression that more was going on than it was. After hearing about Sadia, Tracker's mind couldn't concentrate on sex. As much as he wanted to delve between Zoey's legs and drop his cock as deep as it would go, talking to Thorn had softened his desires in more ways than one. When he entered the house, he walked to the main bedroom to find Zoey had taken a bath and fell asleep. He glanced down at Zoey sleeping naked, and he lay down near her. It had been an exhausting day. He gave himself an excuse he could live with. Only because for the first time he wasn't turned on by a naked human female form. The thoughts of Sadia played over and over in his mind. Thinking about how he felt when he entered her tight body only made him want her more, and now nothing could satisfy him but entering her again. He shook off those thoughts, closed his eyes, and settled with the ones about being tired. But in reality, he could ride the motorcycle all day and night, and still fuck for hours, and never feel the least bit drained. He had come to realize that he was thinking more of Sadia than Zoey. He wanted Sadia more than he desired Zoey. It wasn't because she was married. That never entered his mind. It was because he had true feelings for Sadia. She was what he wanted, he finally understood. Tracker's stubbornness would not let him go back to her. He refused to be controlled by anything. He watched at the moon. He had yet to conquer its sway over him, and he would, he vowed.